This year is going to be my third time participating in Traka, and I think I'm going to have the most radical setup I've ever had. I'm making this video to share with you what bike and what setup I'm going to use for this awesome Traka race we have in Girona every year. 5,000 participants, people from all over the world, a very demanding terrain. It's not the champagne gravel you might expect. There are many technical sections that feel almost like mountain biking. And well, like I said, I've been doing a lot of testing and I've been completely free to choose whatever I wanted in terms of components. And honestly, I have the pleasure of presenting to you what I believe is going to be the fastest and most reliable machine I've been able to build. Don't pay attention to these tapes with Proto and all that written on them. Obviously, by now you already know that what's here is a new BMC Cayuse frame. The thing is, we were recording this before the embargo, and that's why I'm keeping it a bit camouflaged, because in Girona there are a lot of prying eyes, a lot of cameras, and well, the confidentiality agreement is signed and we have to try to respect it. Of course, for the trained eye, for someone who knows about bikes, it's easy to tell that there's a BMC under here. If you want to see a review of this bike as it comes stock, the video is already on the channel. I'll link it here. But anyway, what I've done is a reinterpretation of the entire stock setup to keep what worked for me and especially the rest of
componentes, adaptarlos a el terreno tan duro que tenemos aquí en Traka. Yo creo que
what we need to talk about, which is what stands out the most, are these amazing wheels that I've put on. That combination of super wide tires and very advanced wheels. Here we have a few high-level ones. It's a national brand with its own in-house development, with rims that are 32mm wide internally, 40mm in profile, and weigh 1,404 grams. I think that was the weight of the set, assembled with some Sapim spokes and then some hubs, some DT Swiss. Look, there you have them, about 3.50, okay? And this is the perfect platform because it's a wheel. I've been trying different wheels along this whole journey up to Traka, and I've really liked this wheel because it's wide enough to support and give a good base to a tire as wide as this one, which we'll talk about in a moment. This one has just the right profile, 40mm. Any deeper than that, like with Zip for example, it greatly reduces the wheel's ability to absorb, which in the end, the wheel's ability to absorb mainly comes from the length of the spoke. The deeper the rim, the shorter the spokes. So 40mm seems like the perfect size to me. And well, like I said, it's the perfect support to use a mountain bike tire, which in this case is the Michelin Jet Cross Country 2 with a square profile. In size 2.25, okay, it's a fast rolling tire, as you can see, with a low, closely spaced center tread. But what's really interesting is that the side knobs are also low, so when they hit the ground, they don't drag. Well, why a mountain bike tire and why so wide? First, because I can, okay? Because I can mount it on this bike, which allows for this tire size. I've also been completely free when it comes to choosing the bike. I have 4, which I've been testing, and in the end I went with this one from Cayuse. Because of its aerodynamics, comfort, even though it's very stiff, the position, it's an extremely fast bike, but above all it has the capacity to fit these tires. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to tell you about this setup. It's obvious that here behind the fork there's no problem. You can see it fits without any issue. I could even ride on a muddy day and there wouldn't be a problem. But in the rear part, look, because honestly, if I try, I can't even fit a finger between the seat stays and the wheel. Or right down here at the bottom bracket, I can show you it's really, really tight. In fact, I'm going beyond what the brand officially recommends, which is a maximum tire clearance of 52mm. Then there are another 6mm required by the ISO standard, but I'm actually fitting a tire that, when I measured it with a caliper, gave me between 60 and 61mm of actual width. I don't recommend trying these at home, because if something like a rock gets in and cracks the carbon, any brand could have problems. Or whatever, any brand is going to give you trouble with the warranties. But well, since my job is to test bikes, I think I can allow myself to do it and push the equipment to the limit. But well, that being said, I chose the bike, the frame kit based on these needs. What does riding with such a wide tire mean for me? What's important is not that it's wide, because I've also been testing tires from the Michelin range, for example. I've been testing other brands, but I've mainly focused on the Michelin range, and I've been testing tires just as wide, but in the gravel version, and they don't feel as fast as these mountain bike ones. This is something the Americans have been working on for 23 years now. I think Dylan Johnson was the pioneer here when it came to running these tires. Mountain bike tires on gravel bikes. And I won't go into detail because later on I'll make a specific video talking about absolutely all the pros and cons of using a mountain bike tire on a gravel bike. But it seems that simply because of the type of construction of the mountain bike tire, it rolls much more easily and slows us down much less than if we use a gravel tire that's exactly the same width, okay? You might also think that this option is because you can descend much faster. Well, that could be, but what really happens is that you roll much faster, okay? That's one of the big advantages. I'm only running 20 psi of pressure for my current weight of 72 kilos. If you want with all the gear and everything included, let's say 74 kilos, helmet, shoes and everything I'm carrying, I'm only running about 20 psi of pressure. And it's a perfect pressure because on pavement it keeps things firm enough, but off-road it soaks things up beautifully, especially on rough terrain. You know, that typical ripple, the one that forms on the trails with the tractor tracks and all that. Man, this bike just flies compared to the same bike with 45mm gravel tires. No, not everything is perfect, and there are some downsides to using a mountain bike tire. I insist I'll make a video later on with absolutely all the pros and cons, but there's one small downside that I do want to mention now because it led to another change on the bike. And that's that the rear wheel is much harder to accelerate. At a moment when you've almost come to a stop and you have to get the bike going again, or you're climbing and you have little momentum, the rear wheel is much harder to accelerate. So that has led me to make an important change, which is switching from using a single chainring with 48 or 46 teeth. Last year, for example, I used 48 teeth in Traka, and in Rancho I also used 48. This year in Santa Bay, with 46, let's say 46 is pretty much perfect for me. Now, because of that need for more force to accelerate the rear wheel, at certain times I preferred to use a slightly smaller chainring. At 44, I'm also not in as good shape as last year, and that has something to do with it too. Okay, but between one chainring, 2 teeth smaller, 44 teeth. And these cranks from the Spanish brand Suo are 165mm, obviously shorter than the 170mm ones I've used until now. Well, this allows me to accelerate the bike much better. Of course, the power meters, the dual-sided power meter pedals, which I've trusted for a long time. The Favero Asioma Pro MX, which is the off-road version, which I use both for mountain biking and gravel, are wonderful. They're accurate and let me know exactly the pace I need to keep at every moment. They're mounted on the bike, obviously, and on the back I've installed a SRAM cassette, the XSSL, aiming for something as light as possible while still being reliable. I was thinking about maybe installing a Garbaruk. In fact, I have the Garbaruk, but to keep compatibility as high as possible and not have any problems at all, which I don't have to have. In fact, I have the Garbaruk installed on the Alaus, for example, and I don't have any problems. But anyway, I kept the XSSL. However, here I had a GX available instead of an XSSL. The weight difference was about 50 grams. The performance is the same, it's rough, it's tough, it handles hits and everything well, so that's what I went with. As for the rest of the bike, the seat post is the same as the standard one. This Fisek isn't the lightest you can get on the market, but it's comfortable enough to use in a gravel race, which I really appreciate. The cockpit is the BMC one, the one that comes standard with the bike, which is awesome because it's the same one that comes on the aero bikes, on the Time Machine, on the Machine R, and it has all this cable routing, so everything stays completely hidden. They're external housings that once installed keep everything neatly tucked away perfect, and of course the Coros Dura to manage the whole route to keep all the data clearly visible, just like last year I already did the race with it, and well, it's wonderful. Capacity for 2 large crown bottles, where I'm going to carry everything. The isotonic drink here, the hyper connection, the 90 with 120 grams of carbs here in the front, and that's basically the whole setup I use. Something very radical, very different from anything I've tried so far. Because I started in gravel with 38mm wide tires, almost slicks, with a Willier. I remember many years ago in my first rancho, and from there things started to evolve. 40, 42mm, 45. I spent a lot of time there at 45. This past year I tried 47 with some tread at Suministro Santa Bay, 48 completely practically slick on gravel, and now as you can see I've switched to mountain bike tires, and unless it rains then I'd really think twice about going out with these tires. Because of the little tire clearance I have left, the wheel could get clogged or something else could go wrong. I don't know what I haven't discovered yet, because I've actually ridden about 800 kilometers with this bike and everything has worked great for me. Right now there's no turning back. I'll make a video, I insist, explaining the pros and cons and how it went for me in Traka and all of that with this setup. But right now for me there's no turning back. In performance, in comfort, in speed, in absolutely everything with mountain tires on gravel. I insist, no brand is forcing me to say this. I'm completely free to choose the components I wanted. I could run narrower gravel tires. I've actually tried several options, and this is what has worked best for me. For now, all that's left is to put on the race number and do the final test in the race. So that's it. If you're around Girona, see you here, say hi if we meet along the way. It's going to be an incredible few days, and if not, stay tuned to the channel, hit the subscribe button, because soon I'll be back with all the conclusions. And with that, the full story of everything that happens at Traka, which I hope will just be fun. Did you like it? Don't forget anything or anyone. Thank you, see you, bye.